Let me thank the members of the committee for their public service, which I value deeply. My name is Marc Morial. I currently serve as President and Chief Executive Officer of the National Urban League, headquartered in New York City. I served 8 years as mayor of New Orleans. I served 2.5 years in this body as a Louisiana state senator. And for the record, because I think it's important in this moment, my late great father was the first black person to serve in this body when he was elected in 1967 since Reconstruction. So if I may, Mr. Chairman, I want to begin with a story, which is I came to this Capitol for the first time in 1968. I was 10 years old. I came with my late father as we drove up then Highway 61 in our Sunday best as he was inaugurated to the state legislature. I was a young boy enamored by politics, so I began to spend 2 to 3 weeks after I got out of school with him in this Capitol. In 1970, I became the first black person to serve as a page in this legislature when I worked for the late William Gust, who was a state senator and later attorney general. Here's what's important. When I came to this Capitol as a 10-year-old boy, every black person that worked in this Capitol had a mop or a broom in their hand, or were carrying a tray of water if they were women, or coffee, or they were shining shoes in the Capitol barbershop. There were 0 women who did anything other than serve as secretaries in this building. When my father served in the state legislature, he offered a bill to delabel blood in Louisiana. Louisiana had a blood labeling statute which required blood to be labeled as either black blood or white blood, and it was illegal to give a white person a blood transfusion with black blood or to give a black person a blood transfusion with white blood. When that bill came up, one of the most awful things happened at the floor in the House of Representatives. And that was a legislator who went to the mic and repeatedly used the N-word on the House floor to oppose the bill. It made national news and embarrassed this state at a difficult time in its history. I returned to this Capitol 20+ years later as a 31-year-old member of the Louisiana Senate. When I came back, this Capitol had changed. We had 30 black members serving. Black people and women were then beginning to serve in positions of responsibility on the staff, as lobbyists, and the executive branch. This state was changing. When I served in this body, black and white legislators, Republican and Democratic legislators fought but worked together to advance the interests of this state. This state was on an arc of change. What this moment feels like to me right now is a reversal, of progress. And let me say it from this perspective, Mr. Chairman and members. I'm a native of this state. I love this state. My family has been in this state since before the American flag flew over this state. But I've spent the last 20 years living in New York City. In my role, I serve on the boards of major corporations. In my role, I chair 8, and have chaired over the last 20 years, 8 corporate advisory boards. For this legislature to be mired in a battle, a pitched battle, over 1 or 2 congressional seats, when we're 48th in education, 49th in health care, have one of the highest poverty rates in the country, where our life expectancies are 48 among the states, when homeowners insurance is exploding, making this place unaffordable, looks like, from the outside, misplaced priorities. In quiet rooms in New York and Chicago, places that control investments, they look down and they say, look at Louisiana. They're having a good old fight to turn the clock back. Are we going to be back here next year with rank partisan gerrymandering to alter the apportionment of these legislative districts? Are we prepared to go back? What I say here today may not impact how any of you vote today. It will impact how you're seen in history. It will impact how this legislature is seen in history. The legislatures in this state in the 1950s and the early 1960s that went to great lengths to resist school integration, to resist the advancement of civil rights, are not seen in anybody's history book as heroes. They're seen as obstructionists. They're seen as people who thwarted the advance of history. So I want you to know how today, as a boy who was here as a 10-year-old, but later came back as a legislator and saw a state I love begin to transform itself and change, sees this moment as an inflection point and the beginning of a tragic reversal, fighting over 1 congressional seat or 2. Not spending a 3-hour hearing on fixing education. Mississippi is now gone to 16th in the country. Not spending the same amount of time on homeowners insurance, or an expansion of health care, or all of the difficult challenges and problems. Where are our priorities? Is it just a battle for power, for the sake of power? The marginalization and the isolation of communities because we can. Not because it's good, not because it's best, not because it's right. What we have to do in the South is learn to share power. Share power. Republicans, Democrats, blacks, whites, the growing Latino and Asian communities, men and women. We have to learn to share power, because that's what democracy is all about. So this debate, this discussion, troubles me from that perspective. Now to the plan. It's why we have a Voting Rights Act, to create fair opportunity for people to elect representatives of their choice. And so again, I'm honored to be able to testify before this legislature. I wanted to remind you of that moment in 1968 because it was so compelling on a 10-year-old boy. But it was compelling for me to come back and see and be part of change 20 years later. And at that time, I had this great hope that there would never be a day like this, when we be fighting over whether we go forward or whether we try to put the brakes and somehow go backward. So I urge you in this moment to do what your conscience tells you to do. And you can balance it with your politics, because we always do that. And I think you'll get not Mr. Morris's plan. You may not get any. You go get another plan. Go get a good plan. Go put a good plan. It can be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morial, and thank you.
With respect to Senator Morris, I call his plan the jack-o'-lantern plan. Because the jack-o'-lantern of Republican maximization is on top of a head of intentional racial discrimination. There is no way, and can't get into a man's heart, can't get into a man's mind. Every one of you know what the intent of the plan is. I've been in every quiet room in this building when I served here. And I'm not going to sit here and allow my intelligence and integrity to be insulted because someone can sit here and say, I never considered race. You can say it 1,001 times. This is a jack-o'-lantern plan with a big jack-o'-lantern head mask on top of intentional racial discrimination. Now, my appeal to this committee is to scrap all of these plans. And like grown men and women, black and white, from all sections of this state, to go back to the drawing board and identify a consensus plan that reduces the risk of millions of dollars more of litigation, and which sends a message to the people of Louisiana that we're going to be committed to finding common ground when it comes to reapportionment. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because it's possible. The Calais case, and many of you are lawyers like I am. When I heard some of the characterizations of the Calais case, Mr. Chairman, it reminded me of Earl Long's characterization of Attorney General Jack Gremion in the 1950s. You all may have heard it. He said of the Attorney General, if I want to hide something from the Attorney General, I'll just put it in the goddamn law book. The Calais case does not prohibit the use of race. It reduces it significantly. The Calais case does not allow partisan objectives to override intentional racial discrimination, compactness, closeness of communities, or any other factor. It just suggests that it is a permissible objective. Some of the testimony I hear is selective in its reading of the case, twisting gymnastics of the logic of the case. And this committee shouldn't be swayed until you get somebody who is an expert, and I don't pretend to be an expert, to tell you exactly what the case means so that it can guide your thinking and guide your steps in coming up with a plan. I respect every one of you. Running for public office and serving in public office looks fancy, but it's tough and hard. And all of you operate under extreme pressures. But when you go home, you want people to say not only you did a good job, but you want to say I did the right thing under challenging and difficult circumstances. The right thing to do is to throw all of these plans in the garbage can and go behind, set up an organized framework for everyone to sit at the table and work things out. That's what I saw when I served in this legislature. Giving and taking, with no one winning all, with everyone giving a little to achieve something that works for everyone.
The system went out, so we're back on his testimony.
I will simply close by saying to each and every one of you, and by reiterating, that democracy works best when everyone has a seat at the table. It is a tragic thing in this state that our voting is so racially polarized. To my Republican friends, I don't think there's been a black Republican member of the legislature since the 1800s. This state doesn't even elect black Republicans. This state has rarely elected a black person to office who wasn't in a majority African-American district. It's different in Illinois, it's different in New York, it's different in Connecticut. You have black members of Congress in the Northeast and in the West representing districts that are 10% black. You think that could ever happen here? Well, if it can, it hasn't. We can't undo the polarization of the electorate with rhetoric and with happy talk and with philosophical flourishes. It's why we have a Voting Rights Act, to create fair opportunity for people to elect representatives of their choice. And so again, I'm honored to be able to testify before this legislature. I wanted to remind you of that moment in 1968 because it was so compelling on a 10-year-old boy. But it was compelling for me to come back and see and be part of change 20 years later. And at that time, I had this great hope that there would never be a day like this when we'd be fighting over whether we go forward or whether we try to put the brakes and somehow go backward. So I urge you in this moment to do what your conscience tells you to do. And you can balance it with your politics, because we always do that. And I think you'll get not Mr. Morris's plan, you may not get any, go get another plan. Go get a good plan. Go put a good plan. It can be done. Thank you.